Well, you ready for the word? Amen. Thank you. Thank you, Michael. Well, I'm ready to give you the word this morning. Well, we're still in our amazing series called REthink. Everybody say REthink. Come on, say that again. Say REthink. Turn to your neighbor and say, you need to rethink. We're continuing to learn how to think about life in the way God says to think about it. How many of you know there's a God's way of thinking and our way of thinking? And they don't always match up, but it's our job to learn how to think like He thinks. The world wants to program us to think according to a certain system, whether that be a cultural system, a geographical system, a national system, a gender-specific system. But God has something to say about everything, and we need to learn to think that way. Our theme verse is found in Romans chapter 12, verse 2. And let's read this out loud together. If they could put that up there. Let's say this out loud. And do not be to this world, but be by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is that good and acceptable, perfect will of God. I want to begin today with a question. Have you ever noticed that it seems harder to stay positive than it does to be negative? If you've ever noticed that, say yes. If you haven't noticed that, or that's not a problem for you, please come see me, because you're the only person I've ever met. Why does it seem easier to criticize than to compliment? Why do we remember negative events more than we seem to remember positive ones, or negative comments over positive comments? Why is it easier to point out wrong than it is to see what's right? Why are we drawn to defaming gossip rather than good news? Why does it impact us greater to lose $100 than it does to find $100? Why are there 62% more emotionally negative words compared to 32% positive words in the English dictionary? Why is that? Robert McKee says it this way: in life, two negatives don't make a positive. Double negatives turn positive only in math and formal logic. So why then does it seem to be that we're hardwired a certain way? Are we hardwired to be more negative than positive? Well, scientists say, yeah, that we are. They say that we have what they call a natural negativity bias. I was astounded to learn some things from some scientific studies about this negativity bias. To give you a scientific, if you will, definition of it, it's this: the negativity bias is things of a more negative nature, for example, unpleasant thoughts, emotions, or social interactions, harmful or traumatic events, have a greater effect on one's psychological state and processes than do neutral or positive things. So when something negative happens, it affects you psychologically way more than positive things. In our brains, there are two different systems for negative versus positive stimuli. The amygdala, which is that almond-shaped gray matter in the brain that processes emotions, uses, watch this, 2/3 of its neurons to detect a negative experience. 2/3. So 2/3 of all the negative, or of the neurons in that part of the brain are searching for negative experiences, and once the brain finds them, it immediately stores it in long-term memory, or at least in short-term memory. Whereas positive experiences have to be held in our consciousness, or in our awareness for a minimum of 12 seconds in order to begin to be transferred to short-term memory. So there's a part of your brain that as soon as it's looking for negative events. It's searching all the time. It's not waiting for them, it's looking. 2/3 of its neurons are looking for it. And the minute it comes, it starts storing it into long-term memory. And if you have another negative event that reinforces the previous negative event, it stores and stays even longer. But a positive event needs to stay in your consciousness or stay in your awareness for 12 seconds. I would stop for 12 seconds, but it would be an awkwardly long time. You could say it this way. Rick Hansen says, the brain is like Velcro for negative experiences, but Teflon for positive ones. You know the difference? Velcro sticks together. Teflon is what you put on before you fry an egg, right? It's the thing that rejects things from sticking to it. So in your brain, you naturally attract and attach to negative experiences and dismiss the positive ones. So why are we this way? We're created in the image of God, and God's not negative, is he? No. Everybody say no. Of course not. God's not negative. So why then does it seem like God's not hardwired to negativity? Scientists suggest it's because of a survival mechanism that was put in us to survive hardship throughout the ages. But I believe that it's a result of the fall of man in the garden and the God, little g, of this world blinding people's minds, like we learned from 2 Corinthians 4:4. See, I believe God created us to dream and to create and to imagine and be overwhelmingly positive in the image of God our Maker. But the enemy of our soul comes to steal, kill, and destroy. And one of the best tools he uses to do that is negativity. But last week, you say, well, wait a minute, Duane, you're talking about all this negative stuff in the brain. What about that? Well, last week, and we learned in 1 Corinthians 2:16, we have the mind of Christ. Come on, say it with me. I have the mind of Christ. Say, we have the mind of Christ. And his mind's not a negative mind. He has no gray matter in his brain that processes negativity quickly. So we have access to be different than a fallen, natured mind. So today I want us to rethink the negative effect. So while we're rethinking some things, today I want us to rethink the negative effect. With these facts that we've just learned about how our brains are naturally drawn to negatives, we got to know and understand and focus on the importance of thoughts dwelling on the truth, not just the facts. So let's rethink our approach to counteracting negativity. You can't just say, I won't be negative, I won't be negative, I won't be negative. That's negative. Right? It's like saying, I'm not sick, I'm not sick, I'm not sick, I'm not sick, I'm not sick. That doesn't work. So how do we overcome the negativity bias? Let me give you 3 tools that will assist you in overcoming this negativity bias. Number 1, maintain an attitude of gratitude. Now, can I just tell you something? This is work. This is work. Staying thankful is a full-time job. Let me give you a few ideas or tips from some other people that might help you in your occupation. Your occupation of gratitude. First of all, stop to say thank you to someone at the top of every hour of the day. Dan Rockwell, leadership freak, leadership guru, life coach, Dan Rockwell says, stop to say thank you to someone at the top of every hour of every day. How many of you think that would help? If you did that at the top of every hour of every day, you said, I'm going to stop and I'm going to say thank you or be thankful to someone for something, that would begin to change some things. Next thing, keep a daily journal of things you're grateful for, similar to Ann Voskamp's 1,000 gifts. So what if every day you just journaled things you're thankful for? How about number 3, when any negative thought or worry comes to mind, immediately thank God for the promise that counteracts that negative situation. So if you get a bill you don't think you can pay, what if you stopped and said, I thank my God that He supplies all my needs according to His riches and glory? If you get a bad report from the doctor on your physical health, what if you said, I thank you, Jesus, that by your stripes I am healed? Come on, are you here? Next one. How about inserting small, pleasant, positive experiences throughout your day instead of only waiting for the weekend, vacation, or birthdays? What if you just started thinking and inserting small, pleasant, positive experiences throughout your day and dwell on those rather than waiting for some big event? In other words, Dan Rockwell also says it this way: praise small things, or you could say be thankful for small things frequently rather than big things infrequently. Most experts agree that multiple small positive experiences throughout the day combat the negative, more significant big one. Celebrating small benchmarks throughout a project can be more powerful than waiting to the completion. How many times in a work environment do we critique and criticize, all throughout the process, and then at the end of the project we say, well done, we did it. That's one positive to however many negatives. That's not enough. We have to work at maintaining an attitude of gratitude. 1 Thessalonians 5:18 says, in everything give thanks, for this is the will of God in Christ Jesus concerning you or for you. Notice it didn't say for everything give thanks. It said in everything give thanks. I don't give thanks for sickness because God didn't send it to me. But I can thank God in sickness because He's bigger than the sickness. And what the devil meant for evil, God turns for good. So in everything, somebody say in everything, give thanks. Now, in everything, of course, he's talking about in everything, give thanks to God. But what if we applied that to people? What if in every interaction with people I found a way to be thankful? What if we decided to thank people in every little chance that crops up? We tend to think of Thanksgiving as this cute little obligatory thing that we're meant to do. No. Giving thanks is powerful. It's meaningful. It's transformational. It's a tool that not only helps those around me, but it helps transform me to be more like the person I was created to be in the image of the Father. Now, I can hear some of you thinking, you're thinking, but I don't feel like being thankful. I don't feel like being thankful. I don't feel it. How about thinking of gratitude as a practice, not a feeling? Instead of thinking of, I'm thankful when I feel like it, I'm grateful when I feel like it, what if we rethought that and said, no. I'm going to be thankful and I'm going to have gratitude every day as a practice, as a habit. Now some of you are going, well, I'd be lying. No, it's not lying. Find something to be thankful for. If it's a person, God created them, so there's got to be something to be thankful for. They're God's child. Surely there's one good thing. If it's a corporation and there's nothing to be thankful for, close the doors and go home. But there probably is. The real point is there's a lot to be thankful for. We just have to learn to look for it. See, in Christ's redemptive power, we're not limited to this negativity bias. The gospel is the good news, and it overcomes the past, the present, and any future bad news you'll ever have. Is anybody here today? We don't have to live subjected to the pull of a negative attitude. We're led by the Spirit of God, not our carnal minds. And when we are, we see and we speak positive truth, which neutralizes the enemy's negativity over our lives and others. This leads me to the second tool to overcome the negativity bias, which goes hand in hand with number one. It's two sides basically of the same coin. Number two, never underestimate the power of praise. The power of praise. All throughout the book of Psalms, we see how the negative, I just want to encourage you, if you want to understand the power of praise, read Psalms every day. And especially when you start getting around like 150 and toward the end of Psalm, you start hearing all kinds of praise things. But really, throughout the book, it counteracts all kinds of negative events. David understood that praise is a weapon. Psalm 71:14 says, "As for me, I will always have hope." That's a bold statement. As for me, I will always have hope. Some of you go, I don't have any hope. David said, as for me, I always have hope. I will praise you more and more. So his hope was connected to his more praise. Our praise needs to be more and more than the negativity around us. Or this is the year of Re. If you're sitting down, it looks like the year of RF, but that's actually RE. And Re means again and again. So what are we really trying to say? Our praise needs to be again and again. Our praise needs to be more and more. So whenever there's a negative event, we need to praise again and again and again and again. See, do you realize that as you praise and sing for longer than 12 seconds. Remember what I said before? It sends the positive message in the songs from short-term memory to long-term memory. No. I'm going to come down here, y'all. I'm going to help you get this. See, when we're praising God, how easy is it to be praising God and thinking about, oh, man, I got a lot to do today. Jesus. And then there's so many things that, that person really hurt my feelings. And I usually sit over there, but they were in my seat. Oh, hallelujah. And we're drifting in and out. But what if for 12 seconds, upon 12 seconds, upon 12 seconds, upon 12 seconds, we could tune out the negative and tune into the positive and say, God, whatever this word says, whatever this song says, whatever the Bible says, I'm going to dwell on that and I'm going to hold it. Remember we talked about taking thoughts captive. You take negative thoughts captive and punish them, but you take God's thoughts captive and you hold on to them and say, you're a prisoner inside of me, and I'm not going to let you go from my mind. That's why his praise shall continually be on my lips. That's why over and over when I'm preaching, I'm trying to get somebody to agree with me. And sometimes I'll say, why don't we stop for 10 seconds, 12 seconds, and somebody give God praise. Come on. Why don't you just thank God right now? Why don't you just shake off whatever's been negative, whatever you've been dealing with, whatever's been coming out? Why don't you just focus on how big and how good and how great God is? Come on, don't stop. It ain't been 12 seconds yet. See, we should praise at least 5 times more than we complain. Say, where'd you get that? It's scientific. Most experts agree that it takes 5 positive interactions to balance out 1 negative. Some say 3 to 1, but most agree it's higher. Look at the Harvard Business Review did a study, and they said this, that healthy or productive teams have a culture that functions at an average of 5.6 positive to 1 negative comments within the team. They said unhealthy or low-performing teams average 0.36 to 1. Wow. No wonder people ought to want to come to a life-giving church. Because all the week, negative. The Dow's going down, and so-and-so doing this, and everything's going bad nowhere, and everything, it's so terrible, and everybody's protesting, everybody's going to kill everybody, and then now it's worse than it's ever been, and oh my God, it's terrible, everything's terrible. We need to come to church and lift up our hands and lift up our eyes like we sang a minute ago to where our help comes from, and realize that God is bigger. We want to create an environment where you can come and know that we believe in you. We love you. That's why the first sign on the door says, welcome home. Think about this in married couples. Dr. John Gottman, who's world-renowned for his marital stability and divorce prediction studies. He says he can predict a couple who will divorce based on the ratio of positive to negative interactions they have. And guess what the magic number is? 5 to 1. He says this, as long as there are 5 times as many positive interactions between partners as there are negative, the relationship is likely to be stable. It's based on this ratio that Dr. Gottman says I can predict more accurately than anyone else divorce. Very unhappy couples tend to have more negative interactions than positive. Dr. Gottman, in his book, The Positive Perspective, said it this way. Here's the bottom line. Even though some level of negativity is necessary in any stable relationship, positivity is what nourishes your love. And I add this, positivity is manifested in praise and thanksgiving. Praise and thanksgiving are powerful weapons. I want to commit to use them. Think about your kids. Do you have to correct your children? Sure you do. But we should be praising them 5 times for every 1 time we have to speak negatively to them. Have you ever felt like your kids or your spouse or whoever, your friend, never hears when you say something positive, they only hear when you say something negative? Okay, I'm the only one that feels that way. How many times in a relationship have you said, they said, you always say bad things, you never say anything good, and you think, I can think of lots of times I said good, you weren't listening. Don't blame them. understand that's the enemy trying to keep it that way. It's not because they're not listening. It's because you're going to have to say it 5 times before they ever hear it. So in my head, the world of my brain, I need to look for praise and things to be thankful for and hold on to them. And in my interactions with others, I need to be more thankful and find more things to praise in them so they have something to hold on to. Are you with me? Finally, our third tool to overcoming the negativity bias is we learn how to count like God. Let me ask you another question. How do you respond to big moments? When I say big moments, I mean a big opportunity. I mean a big challenge. Could be positive or negative, but when a big moment comes, a big opportunity comes, do you think, I can do that? Or do you think, ooh, there's a million reasons why I can't? When a problem comes, a challenge comes, do you think, I can overcome this? Or do you count all the reasons why you can't? Scientists are actually astounded at the mind's ability to produce its internal projections. They're astounded at how your mind has the ability to create the world that you project from the inside of you. If you give out certain trial drugs, there will be a certain number of them that are placebos, right? And we are all familiar, I'm sure, with what's called the placebo effect. You give them a certain number of the drug that is nothing. It's just a water pill. It has no scientific, no chemical change to the person. But a certain number of people with the placebo will get better. Why? Because they think the pill's helping them. So because they think the pill's helping them, now all of a sudden they're better. Placebo comes from the Latin word which means I shall please. So it gives you a pleasing or pleasant or positive outcome because you believe it can. But do you know science has also proven you can think yourself sick and you can think yourself happy. So if you can think yourself happy, you can also think yourself sick. You say, what are you talking about? In a trial for Parkinson's disease, participants were informed about the possible side effects from this medical trial. So they were given a list of the side effects. Surprisingly, 65% of the people that had placebo, in other words, a pill that had no side effects, actually had the side effects. So out of the 100% of the people that had a pill that had no side effects, because they were told the pill could have side effects, 65% of them manifested the side effects. Why? It's what's known as nocebo, or a negative placebo effect. You can find all this on the BBC in an article called The Contagious Thought That Could Kill You. See, nocebo also comes from the Latin word noceo, and it means to harm, or I shall harm. So placebo means I shall please. Nocebo means I shall harm. So nocebo is a negative placebo effect. Do you get the idea? See, the devil has a nocebo. He's always trying to harm you. And he's always trying to convince you, if you do this, you're going to get this negative result. You prayed and it didn't work, so therefore prayer doesn't work. See, whether you think you can or think you can't, either way, you're right. But I've got good news for you. God thinks you can. He says you can do all things through Christ who gives you strength. But we have to think about things the way God thinks about them for that to become our reality. Because if you agree with the enemy, you'll get his effect. If you agree with God, you'll get his effect. In Judges chapter 6, we see Gideon. He's threshing wheat in a wine press, afraid of the Midianites that are going to attack and terrorizing Israel. Now, threshing wheat should take place in a wide open space called a threshing floor. But Gideon was in a small place, thinking small, hiding and in fear. And the angel of the Lord comes to him to have a chat with him under an oak tree. And watch what happens in Judges chapter 6, verse 11 and 12. The angel of the Lord came and sat down under the oak at not Oprah, but Ophrah. And that belonged to Joash, the Abiezrite, where his son Gideon was threshing wheat in a winepress to keep it from the Midian. When the angel of the Lord appeared to Gideon, he said, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." So what did God think? Gideon was a mighty warrior. But look at what Gideon says in verse 13. "Oh, my Lord, if the Lord is with us, then why has all this happened to us? And where are all his miracles which our fathers told us about, saying, did not the Lord bring us up from Egypt? But now the Lord's forsaken us." Had God forsaken them? No. "And delivered us into the hands of the Midianites." So see, God says you're a warrior. He says God's forsaking us, or forsaken us. Verse 14. "Then the Lord turned to him and said, go in this might of yours." Don't you love how God didn't even listen to him? "Go in this might of yours, and you shall save Israel from the hand of the Midianites. Have I not sent you?" And then look at his response. Verse 15. "So he said to him, oh, my Lord, how can I save Israel?" Well, God said you're a mighty warrior. But anyway, "Indeed, my clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I'm the least in my father's house." Guys, if I'm God by now, I say forget about it. I'm picking somebody else. By now, if I'm arguing, God is arguing with Gideon, trying to convince him. I would say, you pathetic little loser. I'm God, and I'm telling you I'm with you, and you're arguing. But God didn't do that. Everybody's thankful I'm not God. Especially my wife. Verse 16. "And the Lord said to him, surely I will be with you, and you shall defeat the Midianites as one man." See, God keeps speaking truth, and Gideon keeps reasoning. Then in verse 17 and 18, "Then he said to him, well, if now I've really found favor in your sight," and I'm adding all my emphasis to these texts, "then show me a sign." You're talking to an angel. "But I want a sign. Show me a sign then that it is you who talks with me. Do not depart from here, I pray you, until I come to you and bring out my offering and set it before you." And he said, "I'll wait till you come back." God is so much more patient than we are. So he said, "Okay, I'll wait till you come back." Cue the Jeopardy song. Then in verse 19 through 22, he prepares some goat and unleavened bread for an offering. He comes back to the oak tree and offers it to God. And the angel says, set it on a rock. He sets it on a rock, and in his hand, the fire comes up and consumes the meat and the broth and the bread. And he goes, well, I perceive this is God. Look at verse 22. Now Gideon perceived that he was with an angel. You are a rocket scientist, Gideon. Alas, O Lord, for I have seen the angel of the Lord face to face. The angel had already disappeared. I don't know about you, but I find this hysterical. But how many times do we do the same thing? God's word says you're an overcomer, and I say I'm the least. God's word says by his stripes you're healed, and you say, but I'm really, really sick. God's word says, and we say. See, Gideon's thoughts was, why has all this happened to us? My clan is the weakest. I'm the weakest in the weak clan. My clan is the weakest, and I'm the weakest in the clan. So that makes me really weak. The Midianites are too mean and too mighty and too big and too bad. But God said, you're a mighty warrior. My presence is greater than the enemy. I'm answering the cry of my people and showing my glory. I'll go with you. And God doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies the called. God met Gideon's negative thoughts with his positive purpose to deliver the people. Negative thoughts aren't ignored or swept under the rug. They've got to be addressed with God's truth. See, Gideon was right. The facts were he was the smallest and his clan was the most insignificant. But the truth was God was with him, and that truth is bigger than all the other negatives. We would look at Gideon and see a cowardly little man hiding in a wine press, hoping not to draw attention to himself. But God thought he was a mighty warrior ready to save Israel. See, Gideon at first did not think he could. And until the angel overcame his negativity, he couldn't. See, my thoughts have to line up with God's thoughts, or I'll never, ever think like him and have what he says. You say, what does this have to do with counting? Point number 3, Duane, you kind of lost the plot here. Learn how to count like God. It has everything to do with counting because your thoughts add up. Your thoughts either add up to what God says or they add up to what your mind says. And the thoughts in your mind either add up to God's truth or they add up to the enemy's lie. And they determine your present reality. So are you counting the reasons that you can't based on the enemy's nocebo lies? Are you counting how you can with God's help? It's time to make up your mind. Worship team, you can come. See, either you agree with God's truth or you continue to argue and count your excuses. Only I have the power to decide, but my decision is my destiny. The choice is mine, but that choice will determine my future reality. Paul was a man who knew how to count. And he talked a lot about counting. Paul was one of those people qualified by the Spirit's power and grace. During his divine appointment before King Agrippa, Paul stood in chains, a prisoner of the gospel, and said the unthinkable in Acts 26. Watch this. Acts 26:2. Paul said, I think myself happy, King Agrippa, because today I shall answer for myself before you concerning all the things which I'm accused by the Jews. This word think is this Greek word that means to count, to think, or consider. Watch this, watch. Paul standing in chains before King Agrippa. And he tells his story about the heavenly vision. And then looking at him, he said, King Agrippa, I think I'm happy. I think myself happy. I don't know about you, but if I'm in chains before a king that could kill me, I'm not thinking myself happy. I'm thinking myself sad. I'm thinking myself depressed. I'm thinking myself discouraged. But Paul said, I think I'm I consider, I count. I'm counting that I'm a happy man in chains. And I've come to tell somebody today, no matter what you're facing, no matter what you're going through, no matter how bad it is, no matter how hard it was to come in here today, you can feel like you're in chains, but today you can throw your shoulders back, you can raise your head up high, and you can say, I think I'm happy. In the worst trial of his life, he said, I think myself happy. What could you do if you learned how to count? If you learned how to count as happy, blessed, fortunate, all the things that could lead to God's call. Just as parents teach their children how to count numbers, God wants to teach his kids how to count with faith. In James 1 and 2, it says, count it all joy you fall into various tests and trials. Same Greek word. Philippians 3:8 says, I count all my accomplishments as dung. In other words, it's just all fertilizer. Everything that I've done in my own strength, I count, I consider, I count. It is nothing. And in Romans 6:11, still Paul, I'm telling you, he knew how to count. He said, I reckon, or I consider myself dead to sin and alive to God. That word reckon is to count or to consider. Whatever you count something as, that's what it is to you. If you count trouble as trouble, it's trouble. But if you count it as an opportunity for the glory of God to come through you, then the glory of God will come through you. If you count this trial as something to destroy you, it will. But if you count it all joy, I'm going through a trial and I count it joy? Yes. King Agrippa said, Paul, you think you're happy. I think you read too many books, because all your learning has made you crazy. Paul learned how to effectively lose his mind. I reckon. My uncle, when I was trading horses, I was a teenager, and he bought this horse. He was a bronc, and nobody wanted to ride him. One guy tried to get on him, got bucked off. Another guy tried to ride him, get bucked off. And my uncle looked at me and he said, you gonna go ride that horse? And I said, I reckon. See, because I knew if I told him I reckon I couldn't, he'd have took those reins of that bridle that I was holding and beat the daylights out of me. So I looked at him and I said, I reckon I can. There comes a time in your life where you got to reconcile some things. You got to say, if God said it, I reckon I can have it. If God said I'm an overcomer, I reckon I'm an overcomer. If God said I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. If God said I'm the head and not the tail, I reckon I'm the head and not the tail. It doesn't matter my situation. It doesn't matter my circumstances. It doesn't matter what I'm facing. I reckon. Somebody stand to your feet and say, I reckon. Come on, lift your hands and say, I reckon. I reckon. All over this building for about 12 seconds. Can you just begin to thank God? Can you just begin to believe God? Can you just begin to believe God? Can you just begin to lift your eyes up